salamat, Mr. Chair. Good morning to everyone. Mr. Chair, may I direct my initial questions to any representative from Benpress Holdings Corporation?
Yes, Mr. Salvador Tirona and Attorney Quezon, the Corporate Secretary, Lopez Holdings. Please direct your questions now, DS Marcoleta.
Who is on board, Mr. Chair? Who among those mentioned is on board?
Yes, they are on board, the both of them, Attorney Quezon and Mr. Tirona.
Thank you. Anybody from those mentioned can answer, Mr. Chair. I'd like to know when was Benpress Holdings Corporation was incorporated.
Mr. Chairman, Benpress Holdings was incorporated in 1993.
1993?
1993, Mr. Chairman.
Would you tell us the reason, please, why only in 1993 was Benpress Holdings was incorporated?
It was incorporated to be a holding company for.
Why only in 1993? Is there any reason?
It was incorporated in 1993 to be a listed company to raise capital for the infrastructure projects of the Lopez Group.
Mr. Chair, the question is why only in 1993? Why not in 1990, 89, or earlier?
I cannot answer that question. That was a business decision, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Before 1993, how was it called?
It was there was no Benpress Holdings Corporation before 1993, Mr. Chairman.
What is the name of?
But there was a Benpress Corporation, which is the.
There was Benpress Corporation, but not Holdings Corporation. Is that right?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Bakit po ninyo in-incorporate as Benpress Holdings Corporation? Who are the incorporators?
These were the family members of the Lopez, Mr. Eugenio Lopez Jr., Mr. Oscar M. Lopez, Mr. Sinakis, Mrs. Sinakis, Manuel M. Lopez. Those are the family members.
So these are the same members of the families that also incorporated ABS, EFCB, and Holdings Corporations. Is that right?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Lopez Inc.
Can you speak louder, Attorney Quezon?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Those are the family members.
After its incorporation, were there any financial ventures entered into with other companies?
I don't. Can you clarify the question, Mr. Chairman?
What is that, sir?
Can you clarify the question, Mr. Chairman?
Can you repeat the question, sir? Mr.
I'm asking, Mr. Chair, that after the incorporation of Holdings, Benpress Holdings Corporation, if there were any financial ventures that it entered into with other companies. Let's say, I'm talking about financial deals and joint ventures.
Well, it had joint ventures with to create Maynilad. It had a joint venture with the French company.
Kung pwedeng pakilakas lamang po para...
It had a joint venture with a French company to create Maynilad, Mr. Chairman. Also, with Bayantel, it had a joint venture with the 9X Corporation to create Bayantel Inc.
So if we say financial ventures with other companies, we also mean loans. Can you confirm that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. How were these Financial Ventures Finance.
Venpress had an initial public offering in 1993, so it had some equity fundraising. It also had raised its capital from through the LTCPs and through loan from borrowings from the bank.
Okay, are you in a position to furnish this committee or submit under oath the complete list of your financial ventures?
Mr. Chairman, can I refer this to Mr. Tirona?
Mr. Tirona, can you answer no, the request of DS Marcoleta?
May I clarify, Mr. Chairman, you're asking for the list of the joint ventures entered into by Benpress into the other companies?
Financial ventures na lang para mas madali tayo. Whether or not they involve joint ventures, but we are specifically more concerned about the financial ventures entered into by Benpress.
Mr. Chairman, the financial ventures, just like to clarify, the financial ventures would include a list of our creditors?
Yes, specifically the loans availed of.
Yes, with your indulgence, Mr. Chairman, we have submitted to the committee the list of our creditors for Buy and Tell, for Maynilad, and as well as the other companies that are currently being discussed in this committee hearing.
What is the time frame involved here, Mr. Tirona?
For for example, Mr. Chairman, if we talk of the Buy and Tell, the time frame here would be, if I'm not mistaken, in 1995. We submitted the documents involved in the financing, which was called the Omnibus Loan Agreement, where all the financial companies that led Buy and Tell were listed in that document, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, can we assume that Benpress also absorbed financial obligations like outstanding loans of other companies it entered into, whether natural or juridical?
I'd like to clarify that question, Mr. Chairman. It's not clear in my mind what the question is.
We're talking of, let's say, when you entered with financial ventures, there might be obligations like what we had established earlier this morning on questioning of Congressman Garbin. Benpress assumed some obligations of Maynilad. So things like this, nature of transactions like this, we would like to know if Benpress absorbed other financial obligations of other companies you entered into. More specifically, whether or not these were entered prior to 1993. Are there cases like this, Mr. Tirona?
None, not that I know of, Mr. Chairman.
Yung sa financial obligations po natin, dahil sinabi kanina nung kasama ninyo that meron kayong mga financial ventures and we would like to know to what extent that these obligations have been secured. Kasi po kailangan nating malaman kung paano natin babayaran yung mga obligations that you entered into. Not only with Benpress itself, but also with those entered into with its affiliated companies. Paano po yung mga security aspects nito? Last hearing, I remember, Mr. Chair, that I asked if Benpress can submit yun pong mga contractual obligations so that we will be able to know from there ano-ano po yung interest rates, ano po yung mga collaterals na in-establish doon, because we will not be able to know this until and unless you provide us the terms of your contracts with the committee. Were you able to provide this? I know, Mr. Chair, that this is one of those I requested during the last hearing.
Mr. Chair, to answer that directly, yes, we submitted the documents referred to or asked by the congressman. This was submitted last February 16 to the committee. It included the documents for the loans as well as which included the list of securities and lenders of the loans, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Considering, Mr. Chair, that I have not looked into all these documents, may I just ask Mr. Terona if the government ever guaranteed payment of some of these loans? Was there any government guarantee, Mr. Terona?
There was no government guarantee on any of these loans, Mr. Chairman.
Sino po yung mga partido na involved dun sa mga obligations? Para ma-establish po natin yung collateral and incidental contracts, including deeds of assignment kung meron po.
Kung sa apat po na kumpanya na involved po, if we talk first of Maynilad, the actual contract, actual borrower is Maynilad Corporation or Maynilad Water Services Corporation, Incorporation itself, and that carried a suretyship of Ben Press. For Buy and Tell, it was Bayan Telecommunications Inc. that was the direct borrower, and this was secured by various mortgages. For Ben Press, these were long-term commercial papers, Mr. Chair, so therefore it only had a negative pledge issued by Ben Press to all the LTCP holders. For the Sky Cable, I'm sorry, but I cannot give you the details as I was, my colleague is not with us right now, Mr. Ventosa, but from what I know, the Sky Cable was originally a home cable debt, which was secured by a mortgage also.
Mr. Terona, your answers will be subjected to some evaluations anyway if this representation is able to look into the documents that you have submitted. You will agree with that, right?
Yes, sir.
Prior to the 1986 assumption into power of President Cory Aquino, were there any financial problems encountered by those obligations absorbed by Benpress? I'm assuming that even prior to 1993, when Benpress Holding is not yet incorporated, but it is a corporation, do you recall some financial extensions or absorptions given to any company affiliated with Benpress or Lopez Company that had encountered some problems?
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I cannot answer that because I was not connected with the Lopez Group at that time, and I have no knowledge of such.
Do you have somebody in your company today, Mr. Terona, who will be in a position to at least recall some of...
Attorney Quezon, do you have some input on this?
Mr. Chairman, I also cannot answer that question since I joined the Lopez Holdings only in 1990.
Mr. Aguilar? DS Marcoleta, can you repeat your question?
I was trying to elicit an answer, Mr. Chair, that even prior to or upon the assumption of power of President Cory in 1986, if there are companies affiliated with the Lopez Group, either we call it Benpress Corporation because Holdings Corporation was not yet incorporated at that time, Were there companies that have encountered problems already with the DBP?
We have no knowledge of any transactions that time. We're not actually with DBP yet.
So, Mr. Chair, am I getting an answer like DBP was not
I think
involved in the
DS
transaction?
Marcoleta, the only record they have here is the loan in 1989, the s- s- Central CATV yun, no? Ha? Hindi, yung unang-una, loan. 95 pa yung unang loan daw na grant, buy and tell.
So, Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask the DBP representatives whether or not they know that Meralco was acquired by the government during the last few years of the former President Marcos for non-payment of maturing loans, if they know that.
We have no personal knowledge of such
Do you
transaction, Mr. Chair.
know that any information na government acquired Meralco?
I have no information, Mr. Chair.
Who has the information, Mr. Chair?
Maybe we can ask the SEC about the status of Meralco, if we can research on the SEC records.
Mr. Chair, we will do that. We will check the previous records of Meralco.
Can you submit through email or to the committee secretariat the history of ownership of Meralco?
Yes, Your Honor. From the available records with the commission,
Yes.
we will do that.
From the 60s to present,
The
Because,
1960
Mr. Chair,
1970s.
Okay.
the information I got from the grapevine is that, and it seems to be very consistent. Prior to the assumption of office of President Cory Aquino, Meralco was acquired by President Marcos' government because Meralco failed to pay its maturing obligations. The reason being that there was a devaluation in the 70s, and it is a loan from the World Bank through the DBP granted to Meralco, and that is the reason why the government acquired this company. And upon Mrs. Aquino's assumption to power, Meralco was turned over to the Lopez company on a silver platter. At that time, information points to the fact, Mr. Chair, that the Lopez company has only about 5% equity in that company. Mr. Chair, before the operation of the SPV, I'd like to ask the DBP representative if it is fair enough to assume that these NPAs have been transferred to the Asset Privatization Trust.
Do you have information on the query of DS Marcoleta, DBP, Attorney Adjong?
I would have no information of such transaction, Mr. Chair.
Can we get any?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Maybe we can ask Attorney Quezon because he was a lawyer already in 1986. He was a lawyer already in 1986 and he already was lawyering for the Lopezes in 1986. Maybe he has a recollection.
Sorry,
Attorney
Mr.
Quezon,
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I joined the Lopez Group only in 1993. I was
1993.
with another law firm in 1986.
You were with Sisip Salazar.
Yes,
after.
Mr. Chairman.
Maybe
Anyway, Mr. Chairman, I think DS Marcoleta is also referring to the reference point of this is the time that Meralco Foundation became a part owner of Meralco.
Mm.
And I think that Meralco Foundation was part owner, no, of Meralco, no? Attorney Quezon, would you know that?
I'm not really familiar with the.
Anyway, Chairman, I think we should do research on this. We can actually ask.
I think we should get the information from SEC on the ownership from the 1970s to present. Can you provide that document within 2 weeks, sir?
We will do that, sir, based on our available records.
Thank you.
So we'll make our report based on.
And the DBP, may I direct any information on the what was mentioned by DS Marcoleta on the loan from the World Bank course through the DBP, if there is such, for the Meralco purchase?
We will check our records.
Yes.
Yes.
During the late 70s or early 80s.
Mr. Chairman, can we have a suspension?
Okay,
1 minute suspension.
suspension, 1 minute. Resume. DS Marcoleta, we need to wait for the all available records to push on the questions you are asking. Are you
Yes, Mr.
amenable to
Chair,
transfer to another topic for the meantime?
In the meantime, I will just ask the representatives of DVP present if they really believe that there are no records of all these transactions of these transferred assets to the asset privatization trust. I think they know that there was such a thing as asset
Maybe we can ask the president 1998. You want to ask Miss
Yes,
maybe-
Mr. Chair. If the president at the time was there,
No, 1998, because she was the all present here are not members of the DBP during the 1990s. Maybe you can ask
Yes, Mr.
President
Chair.
Remedios Macalintal.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
can we ask the privatization and management office to be,
be
here,
invited.
to be invited, so they can shed light on this matter that DS Marcoleta is asking?
I may direct the COMSEC to invite the head of agency of the privatization and trust
And management office,
management office.
which is the successor of APT.
Okay, I think they're in Makati, na Legazpi Village.
Mr. Chair, I think I will also request the committee to invite General Francisco Gatmaitan if he is still alive. Because he was the one appointed by President Cory at the time when Meralco was.
We will research if he's still alive and we will invite him.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
General
Also-
who? General.
So I would like if he is available, the committee should invite the former DBP chairman and former finance secretary Jesus P. Stanislao, because I think he would know
May
all
we
the.
invite the former Secretary of Finance, Jesus Stanislao.
He's also former DBP chairman, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we will invite him.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, DS Marcoleta.